everybody. So, anyhow, I identify as oppressed. That is a sentence that basically no one should ever see. Like, ever. I identify as oppressed is not a good sentence. But someone did say it. And, well, that's what I'm gonna talk about now. So, basically, I found out that there's an organization in Hogwarts that is called the... Yeah, we're playing that wizard game again because I like to play that wizard game when I talk about what happens. But, so anyhow, I found out that there's an organization that is called the League of Oppressed Gentlemen. And they invited me to join. And, well, I mean, like, you know, you may know this. I don't really have a lot of friends. I'm not saying that to demand sympathy or anything. I'm just stating a fact. And so, well, when I found out that they wanted, you know, me to join, I was like, oh, cool. I can have some more human friends now instead of just, you know, like the cats. I mean, I do have a couple of human friends, but I mean, I don't exactly feel blessed with friends. I don't have a lot of them. And you know, one thing I've been called quite often in my life, so often that I even call myself this, is worthless orphan. I have been called that so many times that I use it for myself. I just say, hi, I'm a worthless orphan. Maybe that's not the best way to lead. Maybe I shouldn't lead with that, but I do. So anyhow, I was basically like, I was on the lawn, you know, practicing with my broom and stuff. This person is like, hey, you're that worthless orphan, aren't you? And I'm like, I guess so. And, then this other person is like, well, you know, you should not call her a worthless orphan. You should call her a, differently parented, a worthless, differently parented person. I'm like, well, yeah, actually, that's just as bad. Maybe even a little worse, but I thought that I didn't actually say that out loud. Because I could tell that they were trying to be nice, even though they actually made me feel worse than I did before. By the way, you know, pro tip, if this ever happens to you, worthless, differently parented person, that's not an improvement. Okay, so don't do that. But then I actually went to one of their meetings, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of oppressed people here. And then this person is like, I identify as oppressed. I'm like, wait, what? Okay, now this is getting weird. I identify as oppressed? Oppression is something that happens to you. It's not an identity. And they're like, oh, and then this other person, it was the same girl who, like, originally, like, said, you know, don't call her a worthless orphan, differently parented, yada, yada, yada. She was like, oh, she's new, don't jump on her. And I'm like, being oppressed, I mean, it's like, if you're oppressed, that's something that happens to you. It's not an identity. And they're like, oh! And I was like, well, no, seriously, like, for example, I'm an orphan, and I don't identify as an orphan. I don't have an orphan because I don't have any parents. And I guess you could say that I'm oppressed by, you know, the class system, which gives a lot of advantages and way more family wealth to people with families, you know. People with families have more family wealth, just saying. That's a fact, whether you like it or not. And then this guy steps up and he's like, you know, he's actually from the Malfoy family, by the way. Just throwing that out there. I'm not saying that being Malfoy makes you bad, okay? I'm sure some Malfoys are nice people, I just haven't met any. I'm saying that they're not what you would traditionally think of as oppressed. It's a very old family, a very powerful family. They have a lot of advantages that most people don't have. Okay? They're loaded with advantages, is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that makes them inherently bad. It doesn't give them much practice at being good, but, anyhow, so this Malfoy guy walks up, and he's like, I identify as an orphan. I'm like, what? Is this a joke? People seem to be very uncomfortable now. And I'm like, you're not an orphan. You have two things I don't. You have two things I don't. They're called mom and dad. okay? The tragic circumstances of my birth that I have had to struggle with my whole life, ever since I was 2 years old when my parents died. You know, Danger is my middle name. I had weird parents. They're dead now. I didn't really even know them. That tragedy is not something I can just take on or identify as. Okay, it's not like a bad toupee, which, by the way, that blonde wig of yours, you're not fooling anyone. It's not like a bad toupee that you can just take on and take off when it suits you. Okay, my suffering, my struggle, my tragedy, that is not your costume. I'm actually really offended right now because you are actually you're trivializing what I've been through by being like, I identify as an orphan. No, you're not an orphan. And if you say that you are, you're trivializing the experience of actually being an orphan. Because you're making it just like a Halloween costume and just like, well, I feel like an orphan today. No, that's not how it works. Like I said, you have two things I don't. They're called Mom and Dad. And, well, they really didn't like that very much. At that point, even the girl I thought was nice, like, she just, like, kind of backed away. And they're like, you know, that's wrong, because there are some people, they're what we call trans orphans. They might not have been born orphans, but they transition to become orphans. I'm like, well, there's only one way you become an orphan, and that's if your parents die. You know, it may or may not happen after you're born, but, yeah. If you're actually born an orphan, you don't get a choice in that. Or if your parents die, you know, unless you did it, you don't get a choice in that. By the way, I didn't do it. I was 2 years old when my parents died, so definitely not me. Just check the police report, but if you don't believe me. But, and then this other girl who actually was an orphan, and she's like, well, you know what, I was born an orphan, but I'm not an orphan anymore. I paid some ashwinders, you know, and they brought back my parents, and so now I'm not an orphan anymore. And I'm like, oh boy, I didn't want to get involved in this, but we open up this can of worms. Look, if you give money to an unethical ashwinder to make you not an orphan, you're still an orphan. Like, whatever zombie they pull back from the dead, that's not your real parents. That's something else. That's...
Riley the pack.
Even though I don't know you, I care about you enough to tell you the truth. And the truth is that your parents, okay, those things you call your parents, those are not your real parents. Okay, those are zombies. When someone's dead, unless it's like a Lazarus situation where you have someone who's definitely not an ashwinder bringing them back from the dead, they're dead. You ain't bringing them back, and you ain't seeing them again unless it's in the next life. I'm sorry to say this to you, but you're still an orphan. You might not want to be an orphan. I understand. I don't want to be an orphan either. Like, seriously. If I could wave a magic wand, which I am doing right now, because I'm kind of scared. But if I could wave a magic wand and make my parents come back to life, I would, but I can't. And paying an ashwinder to make pretend parents for me by resurrecting some abomination from the grave, that doesn't make me not an orphan. It just makes me a sad orphan who's trying to, in denial, is what I would say. And then they're like, whoa, that's zombie phobic. I'm like, well, I mean, see, they do eat brains, you know. I'm like, whoa! Then they got really mad, and I'm like, no, it's a fact. It's been proven by empirical data. Just look at police reports. Eating brains is. Well, I'm gonna. If I had any kids, they'd probably be pretty close to being orphans right now, but I mean, I don't for obvious reasons. But if you check police reports, you will see, like, research's been done on this, and eating brains is literally the most common form of paraphilia among zombies. So if I say that zombies are at an elevated risk of eating brains, and maybe I'm a little bit worried if they come in my bathroom, that does not make me zombie phobic. I don't hate anyone for being a zombie, okay? I'm just saying that zombies can be very dangerous, and, so I'm gonna be a little bit worried, maybe even phobic, if I see one who is like, especially if it's like a dude coming into my bathroom. That doesn't make me some kind of evil bigot. It just makes me someone who's, you know, afraid for my safety in light of the fact that there are many recorded cases of zombies entering women's bathrooms and eating people's brains. Okay? That made them very angry, as you can probably imagine, if you've ever encountered these people. And at that point, some of them just started being like, Smurf, go home! Smurf, go home! I'm like, seriously, Smurf? Don't you people know any other words? Seriously? Is that like the only word you know how to say, Smurf? And then one of them, the Malfoy guy, you know, blonde, extremely whatever, you know, words other than oppressed come to mind. Oh. And then he's like,
What do you mean, you people?
I'm like, seriously? What do you mean, you people? You're a white male, okay? You're a white male from a rich family. That's not your fault. You didn't choose what family to be born into, I understand that. And I don't hate you for all those advantages you were born with, okay? But you should not be denying that you were born with those advantages. It's like, you're like a lion, like pretending like, oh, I'm afraid of being oppressed by the mice. I'm afraid of the mice. I know they're gonna eat me. No, they're not, and you know that. Mice don't eat lions. Yeah, they do eat crickets and stuff sometimes, that's true. But they don't eat lions. You have a different body type from the type of person who would be oppressed by mice. So, I mean, don't just feel like I'm oppressed by the mice. No, you are not oppressed by the mice if they look at you strange when you enter their bathroom if you are a lion. If you were born a lion, you need to own that. I don't mean you need to own it in the sense of doing all the bad things lions do. Maybe you could be nice to the gazelle or something. That'd be great. That'd be a nice change compared to a lot of lions. But you don't get to pretend that you're afraid of the wildebeest or the mice or whatever. You're not oppressed if you're born a lion. That's not your fault. You didn't ask to not be oppressed, you know, but you're not. So don't pretend that you are. Don't pretend you don't have all these advantages you were born with. So, as you can probably guess, I did not make any friends in that group. And I guess I just want to say, if you identify as oppressed, you're not oppressed, okay? If people who are oppressed don't need to go around reminding people that they're oppressed because that's self-evident. Okay? If you are a member of the working class, you don't need to remind people that you're a member of the working class. It's self-evident. If you're oppressed, that's who you are, okay? And it's not something you choose, and no one would choose it. If it's something you would choose, it is not oppression, okay? Let's just be completely clear on that. I did not choose to be an orphan. It happened to me. I had no say in it. That's how I know that it's like a form of like oppression or, you know, something bad anyway, not, you know, it's a reason to consider myself disadvantaged. I'll put it like that. It's not something I would choose. Same thing with something else. Like, no one chooses to be a member of a persecuted minority, okay? No one chooses that. I mean, yeah, sure, they might be proud of who they are, you know, they might be, you know, proud of whatever their identity is, you know, but you don't choose to be a member of a persecuted minority. You don't say, I identify as a member of a persecuted minority. No, you say, I identify as like an Armenian or whatever, and then if the people around you decide to persecute you because you're Armenian, that's bad, and it's on them. But it's not because you chose to identify as oppressed. You had the bad luck of being born into that situation. In a society that chose to oppress you. Okay, look, I'm not a social scientist now, so I should probably shut up before I get myself in trouble and say something that I actually do regret saying, not because it made people angry, but because it was wrong. And I do regret if I make mistakes and say things that are wrong. But, seriously. I identify as oppressed? No. That's not how that works. So, anyhow, that is another day in the life of me, a worthless orphan, and a smurf. So, anyhow, bye!